All right, what up, Knicks Nation? You get a doubleheader today. You just had Knicks Weekly with CP, and now you get Game of the Week preview with me. And let's get into it, man, because we got a stacked schedule this week, and no better way to start off than with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So let's get into it. With me on the other side is my guy, Danny Cunningham. He covers the Cleveland Cavaliers for Locked On Cavs. And go check out his Substack called The Inside Shot, where he covers the Cleveland Cavaliers over there as well. We're going to get into everything, man. Talk about the new look James Harden, everybody else that joined after the trade, and see how these teams are going to match up. So hit that thumbs up button for you boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Stay locked in. We're about to get into the nitty gritty as we always do. All right, man. And I survived the snowstorm out here. Got one more round to do, Danny. Got one more round to do.
Brutal,
But good
man.
Lord,
I feel bad
man.
for you guys up there. I'm no stranger to that kind of snowstorm here in Northeast Ohio, but I feel bad when I saw it coming to New York.
Man, it was brutal. I'm from New York, born and raised, but I've been living out here in Boston for like the last 10 some odd years. And the way that city of Boston, man, I got to gripe. I got to gripe with the city, man. I live on a corner. If you're going to be plowing the streets, don't plow it into my driveway. Don't plow into the sidewalk. Like now I got to go outside. I did two rounds today. First round, I like cleared off the sidewalk. I was like, all right, gonna come back. It's gonna be like 3 inches. It's going to be a dusting. Going to take care of that. Next thing I know, I come back outside. They plowed onto the sidewalk. And I'm like, all right, man, I got to call 311, get these guys back out here. So I'm just frustrated. Got to do one more round now. It's nonsense. But I'm glad to have you here, Danny. To have you here. I'm glad that you didn't have to deal with the snow because, as you were saying behind the scenes, you were about to fly through New York going from OKC. Thankfully, you
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, I changed my flight last week before I even knew the snowstorm was coming. I didn't want to be on a small plane from OKC to LaGuardia for 3.5 hours. So I said, I'll just take
Mm.
the bigger jet to Atlanta. And that was the best decision because every flight I would have been on got canceled.
God bless, man. God bless. Well, good thing that you're back home safe and sound in the land, as I see in the sign behind you. Let's get into this, man. Let's get into this. What do you think about the New York Knicks? Because this is a Knicks-centric show. I got to start off there. How do you feel about the New York Knicks this season?
I find them to be pretty confusing, right?
Mm.
Like they had that lull after Christmas where I think they were what 2-9 over an 11 game stretch where they fell apart defensively, and since then they've been awesome defensively. I've got questions that I think I've had through previous years. Like I don't know that a team fundamentally can be awesome in the postseason when the point guard and Jalen Brunson, who's a great offensive player, and I think he's been better defensively lately. But when he's undersized and your go-to offensive big and Karl-Anthony Towns is not a great defender, like I've got questions there. I don't know that the change from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown has really fundamentally changed them all that much. Like I think they're an incredibly talented team. And I find it funny because I think that the Cavs and the Knicks are the two most talented teams in the Eastern Conference. And they're numbers 3 and 4 in the Eastern Conference right now. Like I think on paper, both these teams are better than Boston. They're better than Detroit. That hasn't been the reality for either of them so far this year. But I think the Knicks are a really, really good basketball team. I also think that they're a team that the entire time, that sort of like the Cavs, have had their eyes set on the postseason. And I don't know that they've necessarily taken the regular season super seriously night in and night out.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think every single night they take it seriously. Agree with you both with the Cavs, but prior to the trade and even after the trade, that these two teams are the the most talented teams out of all the teams in the Eastern Conference for this season. And it just, both of them have been pretty up and down. Seems like they're just coasting, just trying to get to the postseason and then rev up there. I'm not a big believer of that, but it is the NBA. I get that it's a 2 game season, whole discourse on whether or not they should shorten the season, this, that, and the third, but I get what they're doing. That being said, I have seen the fundamental change between Tibbs and Mike Brown, and I would say more so in like the uptick in the offensive pace, having multiple initiators, and on top of that, just going deeper into the bench. And so between all those things, which is why Tibbs got axed last season, definitely some of the bigger upgrades for the team this year. That being said, there are still questions on can Mike Brown be the guy to take them all the way? That's why he was brought in here. But we'll see what happens, man. We won't be able to determine that until the postseason comes. But nevertheless, I think to your point, both these teams are very talented, and both of them are coasting right now. But unlike the Cavs, or I should say, unlike the Knicks didn't make any like big overhaul trades. They just got Alvarado, they got Sohan. Cleveland said, you know what? I'm done with you, Garland. I'm done with a lot of you guys. I'm done with you, Hunter. Get up out of here. We're going to bring in James Harden, Schroeder. We're going to bring in Keon Ellis. Talk about that trade, man. Talk about how that all broke down for the Cavs, first and foremost.
So we'll start with the bigger one, right? Because that's the one that like that's the needle moving move, right? I don't care what Daryl Morey says in Philadelphia. James Harden's a needle mover still at this age and just how good he's been. But that was to me because right now, like I don't think there's a debate. James Harden's the better basketball player than Darius Garland. I don't think, and he was all NBA, I think third team last year. Nobody really that watches the game could say that Darius Garland's better than James Harden. The bet on Garland is that 2 years from now he's a better player than Harden is. 2 years from now he very well might be. But the Cavs are at a point where Donovan Mitchell is playing the best basketball of his career. Like he's been incredible, and they couldn't go into the postseason with a risk that Darius Garland might not be 100%. And you don't know what that toe injury is going to bring. And you also look at the liability he was defensively. Not that anybody's ever going to confuse James Harden with Gary Payton on that end of the floor either, but he's less of a liability because he's at least 6'5" and a strong dude too. So this is to me a move that was made with the postseason in mind, but it was also a move to take a lot of the burden off of Donovan Mitchell's shoulders. Like this is a Cavs team that for the first, it really until Harden got to Cleveland, just when Mitchell was on the bench, they fell apart. Like I believe his net rating is like plus 7 point something when he's on the floor, and it's like -4, -5. The Cavs are when he's off the floor. Like it is one of the biggest swings in the league. So for the Cavs to get somebody else that can run the offense, that can be that offensive engine when he's on the bench, that was the thing that they missed so much from what Garland was last year. And I also think too, this move and some of the other moves that they made kind of slides other guys back into the roles that they should be. Like the Cavs asked Evan Mobley to do a lot more offensively earlier this season, and it didn't go well. Like he did not have a good start to the season. He's been dealing with the calf injury on and off really since, I mean, before Christmas. His first game back from his first calf injury was that Christmas Day game at MSG. And then he just came back right after the All-Star break from another calf injury. So he's been up and down, but I think that he's now going to be back in the role that he was so good in last year. And then the other trades too. Dennis Schroeder's been awesome for them so far. Like he's not the most efficient player, but I just think he brings an intensity. And, I don't want to make Lonzo Ball the scapegoat the way that he said he has been. But I think there's something to be said about just how bad he was. Like Dennis has just not been Lonzo Ball.
Mm.
And that's something that's been a big upgrade for the Cavs. And then Keon Ellis has been a defender that I think they've really missed because he's been somebody that gets a lot of deflections. He's got such a high level of defensive activity that has led to offensive success. Like he's never going to be a high usage offensive guy, and he's a good shooter. I don't know how willing of a shooter he's going to be in the postseason, but he makes a lot of plays defensively, and I think that those things have really turned this Cavs team into a team that like it was coasting, certainly. I think they were a little frustrated. They weren't better than they should or than they were, and they should have been better than they were. But now I think they really do believe they've got enough to win the title this year. Now, whether or not that happens, we're not going to find out. I don't know if the 24 regular season games they have left is enough to figure all that stuff out because that is a lot of stuff to try and get situated in a very short amount of time. But as we said, like I don't know that I can look up and down the East and see a team with more high-end talent than the Cavs have, and they've got great role players that fit too.
So let me ask you this because it's so interesting. Coming into this season, I would have said, hey, based on the roster that you started with, it's kind of like a do or die situation for the Cavs because, you go out and you get Donovan Mitchell, you have all these players. This is the core four that was looked at saying, hey, this should be able to win a championship. If they didn't do this here, you probably do a more extensive blowing it up because it's like, how much further can we go? Maybe. I'm just saying. But now that you get James Harden, does it feel like it's like a soft kind of like reset where it's like, all right, if we don't make it to the NBA Finals this year because we made a big trade for James Harden during the middle of the season, can't be too upset because we didn't get a full season with him to really integrate him into what Kenny Atkinson wants to do, get him familiar with Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen because, look, shout out to my guy Wal Mary, he covers the Clippers. He talks about the improvement for Zubac when he was out there, like him and James Harden being that 1-2 punch in the pick and roll, like really solidifying. So you look at that saying, hey, you could do that with certainly Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. If you give them a full offseason, they should be very familiar with one another. Do you think that's true that you got a little soft reset saying if it's not this year, it should definitely be next year?
I do think that's a fair way to look at it. And, I liken this to think back to when the Cavs made a big trade with the New York Knicks back in 2015. And the Cavs got J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert. And that's more of the secondary trade the Cavs made with Ellis and Schröder. I think that's more of a comparable thing. But like
Hmm.
those guys were big impact players for the Cavs. And it wasn't quite enough time. And yeah, Kyrie got hurt and Kevin Love got hurt in that postseason. But then you saw the next season that Cavs team really figured out and they were really, really awesome. And I think that next year's team probably is going to have more returning pieces than it otherwise would have. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is the Cavs are in the second apron, and as of right now, they're projected to be in the second apron again next year. Let's say they don't get out of the second round, which is possible. Um, is ownership going to have an appetite to be the most expensive team when it's now been 3 straight years where they lose in the second round? That's a question I don't have the answer to. And that I think is the most important question because, from a basketball sense, if they don't go all the way this year, given how short of a runway it is when you acquire somebody like James Harden and make such a fundamental change to your team in February, it makes sense to say if we've got more time, we can figure this out. But when you bring in the financial implications of it and how expensive this group is going to be, then I think that conversation becomes a little bit more complicated. And I don't have those answers. Like going into this season, I thought really, if unless the Cavs won the title or lost in the finals in like 6 or 7 games, you could say, okay, well, if the ball just bounces a different way, they win the championship this year. I thought we would see them make significant changes. I thought Darius Garland would probably be gone. I thought Jared Allen would probably be gone this upcoming summer. But now, because they've made these changes, I do think if they don't win the title or if they don't get close to it, I think it makes more sense to try and run things back with this group for a second year as
Hmm.
opposed to what it would have been had they not traded for Harden earlier this month.
Let me ask you this now. Harden, the rumors were that he wanted a contract extension with the Clippers. He's got a player option going into 26, 27. Do you think he declines it? They readjust to extend him? Or do you think he just opts in and then gets an extension? What do you think the Cavs are thinking in that aspect?
I wouldn't be surprised either way. Like James Harden is going to be on the Cavs next year, and he's going to be taken care of financially because he didn't have a no trade clause, but he had veto power. What the actual difference is, I don't know. But like he picked Cleveland as where he wanted to go, and knowing the businessman that James Harden is and has openly talked about this stuff. He's not in Cleveland unless he has reassurances that he's going to get paid this summer, whether it's, maybe declining that player option and signing a new 2 year contract that maybe is a little bit less annually, but more guaranteed money than what he has, or maybe it's picking up that full player option, which I guess is like it's a weird mutual option where there's an opt out date from the team earlier on, but he's guaranteed like $13 million. It's a different contract than we're used to seeing, but it's really difficult for me to see a world in which James Harden is not part of the Cavs next year and probably the year after that too. And then anything after that, I don't know. Like then you start getting into really his late 30s and we don't know who James Harden's going to be at that point, but like this was a trade that was about more than just the 2026 postseason. I think it was about 2027 and 2028 too.
Okay. Think about 28 as well. So, look, man, for me, it's just like based on the history with James Harden and who he's been throughout the league and asking for trades and whether or not you want to invest with him. Is he going to stick around? I mean, obviously Houston was his longest tenured spot, jumping over to Philly, or I should say Brooklyn, then Philly, then from Philly, out to LA. It's like it goes all over the place. Now he's in Cleveland. It's like for I just wonder like for a franchise, I get that there's always the title expectations, and sometimes you got to say, family show it. No swearing on the show, but like family show it. That's what we use for the F word. But it's like family show it. Let's go for it. Let's do it, man. We got to go all. We got to figure this something out, man. The last thing that we were doing wasn't working, so I get it. I'm just curious to see how it all works out,
Well,
man.
I do think too, sometimes you need like a mercenary type. The thing that I think feels so much different about watching the Cavs now versus watching them when they had Garland before they made this trade, like everything because of where Donovan was at in his career when they traded for him, like he didn't feel like they just brought in this superstar. Like he was an awesome player, but he's gotten better in Cleveland than he was in Utah. And he was in his mid 20s still. It's not like he was this established all NBA player type of guy when they traded for him. So everything felt super organic. Like it felt like you watched this team grow together. And now it feels like James Harden is this mercenary that was brought in to help bring this team a title. And sometimes you need a little bit of that. And I think that that's kind of part of the line of thinking for the Cavs too.
Yeah, different swagger, man. You want to add a little different swagger to your game. I get it. And speaking about adding a little different swagger to your game, look, gotta shout out our sponsor. All right, Danny. And that is Fabletics. And let me tell you something about Fabletics, all right? I want to feel fresh. I want to feel inspired when I go to work out. And so that's why I go out and got some Fabletics, man. So the problem is when you go out and you're buying like new equipment, sometimes like it gets too expensive, but that's where Fabletics comes in, okay? And that's why I joined Fabletics VIP, which has changed my entire game. When I signed up, I got 80% off of everything, and I thought it was too good to be true. It's not the quality that surprised me. It was the quality, it's not. And it was the quality that did surprise me. Sorry. Premium fit, durable, comfortable, that kind of activewear you'd normally pay way more for. I won't name some brands, but we already know who I'm talking about. The fit is dialed into you. Joggers that keep you in shape, jackets that keep you warm without feeling bulky. Perfect for workouts, travel days, or just getting back into the normal routine. And look, I bought some of the tees. I bought some of the line shorts. Like I tell you all the time, those are my go-to things. I play pickup basketball regularly. Feels light, breathable. When I'm out in the court, I like to make sure that I got nothing holding me back. And that's why I went out and got some Fabletics, man. So Fabletics is already giving some incredible deals. And I got an exclusive just for all you out there. Get 80% off of everything when you sign up as a VIP. Just head over to fabletics.com/KFTV. Take the style quiz and be sure to select KFTV when prompted. That's fabletics.com/KFTV. All right, man. Just had to take care of some bills around here. Let's get back to it. Shout out to my guy, Danny Cunningham, on the other side. He covers the Cleveland Cavaliers for Locked On Cavs. Also, make sure to go follow his Substack, The Inside Shot, where he covers the Cavs there as well. All right, Danny. Now we're gonna get a little spicy over here, man. All right. Now that you guys got James Harden, you got Keon Ellis, you got Schröder. What do you think they stack up against the Knicks right now, man? I mean, look, I know we're gonna be playing tomorrow, but there's playoff implications somewhere.
I think that they are a. I think they match up better with the Knicks now than they did before.
Mm,
Because I think with Harden, and again, Harden's not some great defender, but I think the Cavs are a little bit more difficult to attack defensively now. And I think that they're going to be more potent in the pick and roll. And I think that you are going to. And listen, we've seen every team try and put Karl-Anthony Towns in pick and roll over and over and over again, and that is what the Cavs are going to do. And the thing that's been able to keep Karl on the floor is he's such a great offensive player, but he's also been somebody that I don't necessarily think has had a lot of offensive success against the Cavs because they also have guys that are capable of defending him. Like I think Evan Mobley's a really, really tough matchup for Karl on the other end of things. So I think that in that situation, like that is a series to me that now becomes for the Knicks to win that series. It almost feels like Mitchell Robinson would need to play more minutes than Karl-Anthony Towns. And I'm not sure that the Knicks are willing to do that for obvious reasons. Like Karl's the star, one of the star players. And it's not an easy thing to say, hey, you're actually just not going to play a ton in this series. So I do think that while the Knicks are an incredibly talented team and they've got ways that they can hurt the Cavs, and I think that there are things that they can do to really attack Cleveland's weaknesses, I almost think that the Cavs have more ways to attack New York than New York does to attack Cleveland now.
mm, interesting. See, the one thing I will say is that Mike Brown is not afraid to sit certain guys and say, you know what, we're gonna go rock with somebody. And we've seen that with Mikal Bridges. We've seen that with he's actually benched Karl-Anthony Towns in the fourth and rocked with Mitch. So I'm more than confident that if he sees a scenario where he needs to roll with a certain player, he'll be more than happy to do that. Even with Landry Shamet, he has gone with Shamet to close out games. He in the most recent game against why am I blanking on who Houston?
Against
There we go.
Houston, he did it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We played Chicago last night, so just trying to remember who we played. But against Houston. He closed out with Alvarado on the court, Landry Shamet. That's over Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges. And he was more than happy to do that to close out against Houston just because those guys were giving some good defense, being energetic, knocking down shots. I wouldn't be surprised if, in a series, let's say the Cavs and the Knicks do match up, right? That Mike Brown would be more than comfortable to go with Mitchell Robinson. As of right now, they're just trying to keep him, in shape, keep him ready for the postseason. Look, man, the man's injury prone, all right,
Yeah.
and they're trying to do the best to just get him to where he needs to be. Because as we saw last year, he didn't play all last season, really until like towards the end of the season, once the playoffs got around, and he was so instrumental in all the matchups, whether it be against Detroit, whether it be against Boston. Indy's a whole other different story because the entire team got smoked. But in those matchups, you just see his defensive versatility. And so we remember what he did against the Cavs when, first time that whole, New York wanted Donovan Mitchell, and now they got to go with the second prize in Jalen Brunson. And then we saw how that ended up. So I actually think it's good. I think if that was a good matchup, I think they both still match up fairly just fine. Personally, I think if anything, the only way to really slow down this team is if you can do what Detroit does, which is force Brunson to be the sole initiator. Because if you can't do that, then this team is going to be running all over the place and doing backdoor cuts, and just finding guys and moving the rock as normal.
I am interested to see how the Cavs would defend Jalen Brunson. Because like right now they've gone out there and they have played with Harden in the fold one game, really. I guess one and a half. I don't want to count Brooklyn like that. Nets team is so bad, man. So really it was just the Thunder game, and they started Harden and Mitchell, Mobley and Allen, and then Dean Wade was that fifth starter. And I think that they have him as that fifth starter, not just with New York in mind, because so far this year, Brunson is 0 of 11 shooting when Dean Wade's defending him. But I think like he's also the guy they want to match up on Jaylen Brown, and who knows if Jason Tatum's coming back, and Cade Cunningham too. So like I'm interested what those types of matchups look like for Cleveland defensively, too, more than anything.
Okay. Yeah. And look, I think defensively, that is the most intriguing part. I think for me, it's if I was to wonder who is guarding James Harden, and I think that's going to be the answer we get tomorrow, just because it's one thing to have Garland who he uses more speed. He's not a speedster like De'Aaron Fox or Tyrese Maxey, but he does have speed, right?
Mhm.
But I think you could still rely on someone like Josh Hart or even a Mikal Bridges to guard him. Even though Mikal is not the most laterally quick guy, you'd still can say, all right, the wingspan will be good enough just to slow him down. James Harden is different, as you mentioned earlier. Like he is a bigger guy, he is stronger, he knows how to use his body and just like nudge guys off the track so that way he can get to where he wants to go. That's a little bit more of a challenge. I would expect probably Josh Hart to get that assignment tomorrow just because of the physicality that he would bring. But it does bring some interesting concepts. Whereas you have OG, who's your best defender overall. Where do you want to match strength with Harden? Do you want to try to gamble with Hart on Mobley at matchups, or do you even say? And I'm just thinking about different variations, but I'm not even just thinking about the starting lineup. But it's like, do you want to go that route where you say, I'd rather slow the engine at this point? Because that's really what you brought Harden in to be. Because Garland wasn't doing enough as a playmaker, where Harden already has come in. I think he's averaging close to what, 9 assists per game at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like
He's
that.
been an incredible passer. Like that's the thing I've been so impressed with is that because he's not really tried to score the ball yet. We've not seen a big James Harden scoring night so far for the Cavs.
Yeah, and I feel like every time for the few times I've tapped in, it's just like it's him being that facilitator, which he was doing out in L.A. And I'm like, that's what they needed. Somebody who can just like organize everybody and get everyone going. And that's where he's at this career. I don't think he wants to be that guy who he was out in Houston and just take like 20, 30 shots and just try to be the sole guy anymore. He's got more than enough guys that can help do that around him in Cleveland. So that's where I'm thinking like, would you rather have OG just try to slow him down and stop everyone from getting into like rhythm because that's what his job is now for Cleveland? That's why I'm curious to see what tomorrow like happens tomorrow. Or does Mike Brown just go with what might be the other alternative, which is, all right, we're going double big. Mitch, you're going to be starting. Cat, you're going to the floor. We're just playing big. Josh, you got to go on the bench for a little bit. Maybe, and just go that direction.
Do you think they would change that for a regular season game? Like, because that to me is like, okay, the series is tied 1-1, or maybe it's game four and the Knicks are down 2-1. And that's the card you play at that point. Like, I
Mhm.
don't know. I mean, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know what he's gonna do. But I feel like that's not a move you would want to make in the regular season, especially for the first matchup against a team. Because maybe one of the lineups they have with their starting five just works. And you don't discover that unless you try it first.
Yeah, no, I could see them easily going with the original starting five. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Brown uses this as like a test to see something different too for this team. He has done that. Like he's more than happy. He's tried the double big earlier this season. He's gone back to the original starting five because there was a lot of discussion internally saying, "Hey, put Josh back in the starting lineup." They did very well last year, numbers wise. Depending on who you talk to, everyone would tell you that this is the worst starting five. Well, mainly because of the defense, because you don't have enough there between Brunson and Cat. They are hustling a little bit more now, so I would say that it's not as atrocious as it was last season. But I could say, hey, even with that being the case, you still might want to go double big just to have more rim protection in this type of matchup and see what you got going on. I can see it going either way. Mike Brown's been the type, which has been a difference from Tibbs saying, I'll experiment with different lineups and be willing to see what happens either way.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see if the regular season's the time to do that, especially knowing because I mean, these guys think about this. Like Mike Brown is thinking that they could see the Cavs in the playoffs, and Kenny Atkinson is thinking the same thing that they could see the Knicks down the line in the playoffs. And I wonder if this is an instance where you maybe don't want to show all your cards.
A little gamesmanship, you're saying, Danny. A little
A
gamesmanship,
little bit of
say.
gamesmanship, maybe. You never and like I think that would be more so on the part of the Knicks than the Cavs because like the Cavs are still trying to figure out who they are. They don't have all the I mean, there are thousands of possessions, right, with the Knicks starting five between last year and this year. Like it's not they know what that group is, where the Cavs have had two games where they've started the group that they're probably going to start on Tuesday night. So I think that the gamesmanship aspect would be more so from the Knicks because the Cavs are just kind of trying to figure out what works still. Like they don't know who they are at this point still, and they're still learning and growing and developing into a new basketball team basically.
Sure, they are. And you know what? Let's get into it then, because let's get into tomorrow's matchup because we've gone through all the storylines. I think at this point it is, hey, mano a mano at this point. It'll be the last regular season matchup between these two teams. Knicks have won the first two. And going into this one, I'm very curious to see now how this team handles the new look Cavs and how it all plays out. But I think the biggest thing regarding the Knicks is it's always going to be a task for them is can they just stop the three? And that's I'm always saying this, Danny, just because they are probably one of the worst 3-point defensive teams out there. Like they make woeful teams look great. Shout out to my guy Evan who covers the Cavs for Right Down Euclid. He came on here not too long ago before the Christmas game, and he said, Cavs aren't a great 3-point shooting team. I was like, you watch. Cavs are going to have a great shooting night on Christmas Day against New York, and that they did. They shot over 40% that day. But still, this is something with somebody like James Harden. That is a guy like between him and Donovan. Do not give opportunities like that. So I'm wondering in this case, can they actually, guard the perimeter? Because look, I know James Harden's going to try to get into the pick and roll. I know Donovan will do the same thing, but you just can't leave these guys on the perimeter because if these guys start bombing away and just hitting shots, then you're playing catch up all game long, and that's going to be even a tougher challenge to match.
Yeah, and to your point, like the Cavs earlier this season were not a great 3-point shooting team. They've been a lot better recently. It started a little bit before Christmas that like I think the week of Christmas is kind of when it started to turn around. And part of that was Sam Merrill was out for so much of the season. Like he missed with a hand sprain. He missed about a month. And he's been one of, if not the best volume 3-point shooters. Like he's shooting, I think, 46% on like six threes a game. He's been incredible. He hit, I think, five or six threes against OKC on Sunday. He had 20 points. So it's going to be like stopping guys like him, Jalen Tyson. Is Dean Wade going to pull the trigger? Because Donovan and James are going to find ways to get their shots up. And like Donovan went 0 of 6 on threes against OKC, and a few of them were wide open shots. Some of them were tightly contested shots that maybe weren't the best shots, but those guys are still going to get their shots up. I think it's more about stopping the other guys because the Cavs have figured out their offense lately. Like, and I know that they've not played the greatest collection of defenses, and that's why I'm fascinated to see what they look like against New York because it will be and should be with how well the Knicks have played defense lately. Should be a pretty tough test for them on that end of the floor. But since February 1st, the Cavs offensive rating is like 124.9 or something
Wow.
absurd like that. It's through the roof while they're trying to incorporate new pieces. So what that looks like against a really good defense in New York, I'm interested in because even on Sunday against OKC, in the first, I think it was 7.5 minutes, the Cavs were down 28-5. And then in the final 40 minutes of that game, they scored 108 points against the best defense in basketball. So like they can figure it out. It's just, are they going to need to figure it out later on in the game, or are they going to know what to do right away on Tuesday night is really a question I'm interested in for them offensively.
Okay. Okay. Definitely we'll be looking out for that. I think another aspect of this game is, and I'm pulling up the numbers right here. Very curious to see what the Cavs are like with James Harden with regards to like attacking points in the paint moving forward, just because over the last 6 games, Cavs are currently six right now when it comes to attacking the paint. And that's an area where the Knicks like to shield off. On top of that, that's another area where the Knicks like to attack as well. Even though they love to hoist up a lot of threes, Brunson, McCall likes to get into the mid range, likes to get into that paint area. Cat is doing a little bit more of like posting up and using his body to get tough. Josh Hart, guy who loves to get out in transition and loves to get downhill in the half court. I'm looking forward to that battle of just who's going to be better at attacking the paint, just because I feel like with James Harden, it changes dramatically since he loves to get downhill. And so I think for the Knicks and the Cavs is who's going to be better and more efficient at doing so because look, threes like you can have a good for even for good 3-point shooting teams, and Boston's like a perfect example. Even the Warriors at times, like in the past, you could be a great 3-point shooting team, but you can have an off night. If you can't get to the
Yeah.
cup, it's going to be a tough time. So I'm very curious to see who will be more successful in tonight's matchup in attacking the paint.
Yeah, I mean that number, the 3-point stuff can kind of come and go as you mentioned, but the Cavs have been better getting into the paint lately, and a big part of the reason why they made the trades they did, and it's not just the Harden trade, but it's Schroeder too, is Donovan was really the only guy that was capable of just beating somebody off the dribble and getting into the paint. And that was an area where I think you saw, if you watched the Cavs, you saw that Darius Garland wasn't right with that foot. Like he didn't have that same quick burst off the bounce that made him so important last year. And a guy like Lonzo Ball took, I think, in 35 games, took 25 field goal attempts or 24 field goal attempts inside the paint the entire time. Like it was just not part of his game. And the
Hmm.
Cavs missed that so sorely offensively. So having Harden, even having Dennis Schroeder, who hasn't been the most efficient guy, but he's put enough pressure on the rim that the offense still looks really good when he's on the floor because it's making defenses commit to him where he's either getting to the basket or he has been a good assist guy. Like I think he had 7 against OKC. So that is something that like has been a big shift for them is they've been able to get to the basket more from the perimeter than they could before these moves.
Okay, go throw it over to you, Danny. What do you think is like something that for someone like me who doesn't watch, or even our listeners here at Knicks Fan TV, if we're not watching the Cavs on the regular, what would you say is like a key area for them right now with James Harden that they really excel at that we should be on the lookout for?
I mean, it's offense. Like, and that is when you are putting out a backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, your offensive floor is so high, right? Like, so many things have to go wrong, and they did in the first 6 minutes of the game against OKC. But so many things have to go wrong to not be elite on that end of the floor, and that's what the Cavs have been. Like, they've just been dominant offensively, but they're still figuring things out. And one of the things that I think is really interesting as far as what the Cavs are trying to do is they don't know what lineups work, what lineups don't work yet. And if you think back to Christmas Day, in that third quarter, part of the reason why the Cavs were able to build that lead, which I think got as high as 18 before the Knicks came back and won, was because of how good Jalen Tyson was, right? Like he was in the short roll, he was making floaters, he hit a couple of threes, he was just fantastic in that third quarter. And they don't necessarily have the same role for him. And that is one of the things that can kind of go wrong right now is his minutes have not been as good because he's not been a starter anymore. He's not playing as many minutes. He doesn't have the same rhythm that he had, and he's been one of the best 3-point shooters in basketball, and that hasn't necessarily been the same since these trades either. So for me, and really for Knicks fans, this is like the first look. It's weird because the Knicks are, whatever, 55 games in the season or however many games they played. The Cavs are too, but this is almost like it's like the fourth game of the season for the Cavs. It almost feels like from a Cavs perspective or even from an opponent's perspective, you're watching an early season basketball game from the opponent while your team's in mid-season form. So I think it's going to be interesting from a Knicks perspective, especially if these two teams meet in the playoffs, is what the differences are the Cavs on Tuesday night versus what the Cavs look like in May.
Okay. And for the Knicks, look, man, defense is still something that there is a work in progress, but New York has been better about that as of late. They've been moving along very well. At one point, they were in the basement when it came to defensive rating. Right now they're 11th. So they're just right outside the top 10 for being a good defensive team. That has turned around after their woeful January where they lost multiple games, as you mentioned. And look, even though they had another BTA night type outing against Detroit, they've still been out there and hustling and trying to figure things out. Even that game against Detroit, where for everything just went to shambles in the third quarter, I thought they did a decent enough job just trying to slow guys down for the most part. The thing is that they just gave up, and then Detroit was like, "All right, we're just going to out muscle you, out physical you," and that's essentially what happened in that game. And so against Cleveland, who I think would be, I think it's fair to say they're in the same vein as New York, where they're more of a finesse team, not necessarily a
Sure.
team that's going to like beat the living daylights out of you like Detroit. This game could get a little wonky in terms of offense because both teams love to score at this point. Both teams love to shoot. And I wouldn't be surprised if we got like a 130-point game between both these teams because they both have enough offensive firepower. But at the end of the day, for New York, because this for them right now, as you mentioned, like you are past the halfway point. We're talking about a quarter of the season being left. Like you
Mhm.
should be like you know who you are at this point, even though still trying to figure out an identity for this team. The identity is still not there. Still trying to figure out how to classify this team. Nevertheless, defense definitely needs to be part of their ilk, and I think they're doing a good job towards it. Tomorrow will be a really good test against a team like Cleveland who's still trying to figure things out. And even though they're trying to figure things out, I feel like with a new look team who's still trying to figure things out, it's not easy for a defense because they're going to be throwing a lot of different things out there. So there's not really a good game plan. Like there's not a lot of
Right.
film that you can go out to and be like, all right, this is what they really like to do. This is what they really like to watch. Like I was looking at the stats. Harden's only played 6 games as a Cav right now. 6 games is not enough data to say what this team likes to do with him, Donovan Mitchell, Mobley out. Like it's just not enough. So this should be a really good test for the Knicks, just because at this point it's just hustle. It's not necessarily knowing schematics. Are you willing to go out there and hustle for 48 minutes and try to slow these guys down? So I'm looking forward to seeing if they can do that for tomorrow. But outside of just these two teams as a whole, I do have a key matchup, and it's not the typical key matchup as I would probably say, where it's just like, all right, it's gonna be Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. I feel like that's a little too like at this point. If I keep saying that, it's like,
You mean you've used that one before?
tell me about it. Really, the guys who are pitted against each other from the Western Conference down the Eastern Conference, the whole trade debacle, everything, whatever you want. Yeah, we're not gonna go that direction, Danny. We're not gonna go that direction. Instead, I'm gonna give some guy some shine who's been playing very well the last 2 games, been playing more aggressive. I'm gonna give Karl-Anthony Towns some shine and Evan Mobley, because Evan Mobley, even though he's still trying to figure out that offense, defensively he can be a problem. So I'm looking at this as the key matchup. While Harden and Donovan are gonna be doing their thing, Brunson's gonna do his thing as well. Even though he's been a little shaky the last 2 games, I believe he'll get back on track. He always loves to get up for these games against Donovan Mitchell, so I'm expecting him to go out there and give it his best. I'm looking at Towns, man, just because you need that second punch. You got the 1-2 with now Harden. Cat's got to be there, and I got to see the continued growth they've shown over these last 2 games, being aggressive. Because for part of this season, it's like it's a new team. I'm still trying to figure out my role on this team. That's what he said about Mike Brown joining this roster and implementing his style. So it seems like he's figured out these last 2 games. Hopefully, that's the case against Cleveland. But I'm looking at him because Evan Mobley, like I said, even though he's not like he's not an offensive juggernaut defensively versatile, man. He can just move around the court seamlessly and be at 10 different places at once. So that's my key matchup for tomorrow. What do you think about that
Yeah,
one?
I think that's the right one. And Mobley is still working his way back from a calf injury. Like I'm almost more interested to see how bouncy he looks, how quick he looks, because he didn't look like he necessarily had that same level of juice defensively against OKC. Like, don't get me wrong, he was still good on that end of the floor, and the Cavs were much better defensively when he was on the floor versus when he was off the floor on Sunday. But what he looks like physically, I think is going to be a really big tell for how well he plays. Like offensively, he's been up and down. You're right. He's not been some offensive juggernaut, has not taken the steps forward that a lot of people, including myself, expected him to take this year. But defensively, one defensive player of the year last year. He's not going to win it again this year. Like he's been hurt too much. But I think that when he's been healthy, he's been just as good, if not better, on that end of the floor as he was previously. Like he is a monster. There are just not very many ways to solve the problems defensively that he can provide, especially when he's not the only big on the floor, when he doesn't have to worry about being the sole rim protector, when he can kind of be that roaming type defender. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks send out their normal starting lineup, I wouldn't be surprised if the Cavs put him on Josh Hart because that's the guy. And I know that Hart's a 40% 3-point shooter, but he's not exactly the most willing 3-point shooter always, which definitely matters a lot there. I wouldn't be surprised if they put him on Josh Hart just so he can help off in those situations and try and create havoc in so many other areas. But like when push comes to shove, if the Cavs want to put him on at center and Karl Towns is in the game, like I think that's a matchup the Cavs feel good about defensively.
The old put a big on Josh Hart. Haven't seen that one the entire time he's been here. Good Lord, man. You know what? I at this point, I embrace it. I hope he embraces it because he needs to continue to knock down threes and just prove guys that look, respect my game, man. Respect my game. Outside of the Cat and Mobley matchup, obviously the Mitchell and the Brunson one. What other matchups are you looking at in this one?
So for me, it's kind of the one you touched upon earlier. Like, who defends James Harden? Do they want to put OG on him? Do they want to put Josh Hart on him? Like, what do? Because this is the first time that any of us are going to watch the Knicks try and defend a James Harden pick and roll when he's playing on the Cavs. And how do they want to line up against him, especially when, the Cavs also have Donovan Mitchell on the floor? Like, it's one thing when Donovan and Evan are on the bench and maybe you have a lineup of James Harden with Jared Allen and maybe Sam Merrill, Dennis Schroeder, Jalen Tyson. Like, I think that's a less important way to line up because you only have that one creator. But when you've got two all NBA caliber guards on the floor, what do the Knicks do defensively? Like, that to me is one of the things, and this is not a Knicks specific thing as I watch the rest of the year with the Cavs. It's, when they play Boston 10 days from now, when they play Detroit on Friday and then again next Tuesday, how are teams choosing to defend the Cavs? Like, are they putting their best on ball guy on James? Who are they putting on Donovan? Like, that to me, and we are going to get our first glimpse of it for a good Eastern Conference team on Tuesday night against New York. Like, what they line up in that way, I think is really going to be interesting, and how the Cavs choose to line up defensively too. Like, I would imagine, as I mentioned, Josh Hart's probably going to be defended by Dean Wade. Jared Allen will probably defend Karl Towns, or excuse me, Dean Wade's probably going to be on Jalen Brunson. Mobley will probably be on Josh Hart, and then you've got OG and Mikhail defended by some combination of Donovan and James Harden. Like, what does that look like? It's just, there are so many questions that I have about the team I cover because the sample size is still so small.
It is really small, and I'm very curious to see what the Knicks do. Like, I think that could be the title of this thing. Is like we're both very curious because, like, look,
Yeah.
with two guards like Harden and Mitchell, it's not easy. And like I would say, hey, you could put OG, but then it's like this is where I say I would not be surprised if they go to the double big because if you go with the traditional starting lineup, that means the way I would have to think about it is that you're going to put Brunson on your weakest offensive player. But then you got OG if you just went up and down the lineup, like I don't know if I want to waste OG on Mobley just because of his strength, even and because Josh Hart is undersized. 6'5", guarding a 6'9", 6'10" guy is not necessarily the thing you want to see out there all the time. Somebody could just shoot
Right.
over him. So like I would say in that case, why not put OG on him, leave Cat on Jared Allen because Jared Allen's not going to be some guy taking off the dribble and Cat doesn't have to expend that much energy to guarding Allen. So that could work out right there. And then you got McCall on Donovan. And so this is where it's like you put Brunson on the last on the weakest offensive player, and then you put Josh Hart, I guess, on James. But that to me is still like like Josh can compete. I'm not going to knock Josh Hart's defensive game. He's not a lockdown guy, but still like it's muscle versus muscle. At some point, like
Yeah.
James Harden is also James Harden. Like the guy is a prolific offensive player. So
Yeah, I do think
that's
a
gonna be a
little bit of
question.
the danger there with Towns on Allen is you're going to see a ton of Josh Hart or even, try and get Josh Hart onto Dean Wade and get Jalen Brunson onto James Harden, and you're just going to try and see them put Karl Townsend pick and roll with Harden and Allen. Like that is the thing that you're going to see over and over and over again.
And so that's why when you say like I would not, that's why I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if Mike Brown goes with this because I know you're saying, hey, maybe you wait for that card to go into the postseason. You might as well just rip the band-aid now and just get it going. At this point
Could.
to say, hey, look, this is like even if it's not for them, like, does it change like, ties? No, because the Knicks already won the regular season series. Nevertheless, like the Knicks are in a position right now where they can't be losing games. Like if you look up and down the standings, like Cavs are right there on their tail as the Knicks are on the Celtics tail trying to catch up. So that whole 2, 3, 4 is all jumbled right now. It can go either way at this point. So I don't think Mike Brown is willing to give up too much wiggle room right there, which I think is why it's a good reason for him to say, you know what, let's go double big tomorrow. Let's try that lineup. Put Hart on the bench for this one. Put OG out there because at least you could say, hey, we'll have Mitch guarding the rim. You could put Towns on Mobley, and then you could put OG on Harden. You still get Bridges on Donovan, and there that matchup seems a little bit. It seems much better defensively than what we were talking about prior to with the original starting five. So I would be in favor of seeing that. Curious to see what Mike Brown does, man. Back to using the word curious. Curious to see what he does tomorrow against them. And you know what? You don't got to be curious about, Danny? That is Mando. All right. Shout out to our other sponsor, man. Mando. You don't got to be curious about Mando. Why? Because they are the best in the game of eliminating bad habits and bad vibes. Okay. And look, Mando whole body does a lot for you. I've been using Mando as part of my daily routine. And what I love most is the confidence it gives me. This isn't just for your pits. Mando is a whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere pits, thighs, feet, anywhere you need it. Once you start using it, you'll realize how clutch it actually is. My go to is the solid deodorant stick. It's powered by mandelic acid, which helps stop odor before it even starts. They also have a spray option that's aluminum free and perfect for those hard to reach spots. Everything is baking soda free, paraben free, and the scents are clean. Bourbon leather, clover woods, pro sport, all fire options. Mando was actually created by a doctor who saw how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And it's clinically proven to block odor all day and control odor up to 72 hours. That's real protection right there, not just masking things with fragrance. Some men mask their BO with scents. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. You can find Mando in Walmart, Target, and retailers nationwide. But for the best deals, head over to shopmando.com. For a limited time offer, new customers get 20% off site wide plus free shipping when you use the promo code KFTV at shopmando.com. That's 20% off. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the promo code KFTV at shopmando.com. Don't mask it, Mando it. All right, man. Let's get into the last segment of this thing before we wrap it up. That is our X Factors for tomorrow's game. So, Danny, since you are the guest, tell me who's your X Factor for the cast for tomorrow.
So I've got Sam Merrill, who, as I mentioned earlier, has been one of the best shooters in basketball all year. He hit 5 threes against the Thunder on Sunday. He has been fantastic for Cleveland, and he has developed into a guy that's been so much more than just, yeah, I'm the guy you're going to leave in the corner. I'm going to catch passes and I'm going to knock down wide open threes. Like he has been somebody that the Cavs use a lot of movement to get open. Like you have to chase him around defensively when he's on the floor. And he's also developed into somebody that, you're never going to put him in isolation situations. But if he's got to put the ball on the floor 3, 4, 5 times and get to a shot, he's been capable of doing that. And like that has been something that has been a big addition to Cleveland's offense. And he's been so good lately. Like I said, he had 20 points against OKC a few nights back. He had the last game before the All-Star break, I should say, had 32 points in a game against, again, the Washington Wizards, who aren't very good, but for a role player off the bench to go out and have 32 points and hit, I believe it was 9 threes in that game, like you've got to have it going. And he's been one of the best shooters in basketball. And if he has it going on Tuesday night, the Cavs are awfully difficult to beat when he starts knocking down threes.
Okay. So you're going with Sam Merrill as your X Factor. I'm going with Mitchell Robinson. That is my X Factor for tomorrow's game, just because You mentioned it. The James Harden pick and roll, man. It is the most diabolical thing in the NBA. And I know that we haven't really seen a lot of James Harden just because his teams haven't really been in the postseason like that for the last couple of years. But look, in this case, you just can't give any leeway when it comes to watching the James Harden Donovan Mitchell show. So I think you're going to need that paint protection. That's where Mitchell Roberts comes in, man. One of the best paint protectors. And on top of that, he's very switchable on the perimeter as well. He's got the mobility to do so. So in this matchup, I'm looking for him just to like slow down the Cavs, whatever they're trying to do offensively, and to give some more protection so that way guys can be on the perimeter, just so that you know you have that safety valve with Mitchell Robinson back there. So he's going to be my X factor for tomorrow's game. Hopefully they go with the double big, slow this team down. It should be a very fun matchup, Danny. Looking forward to it. And
Yeah, I
appreciate
can't wait.
Yeah, man. Can't wait. And appreciate you for coming through, my man. So let the listeners know where they can find you. If you got any work up and coming, we should be on the lookout for.
Yeah, you can find Locked On Cavs anywhere you get your podcast. It's Apple, Spotify, YouTube as well. Also, my Substack, as you mentioned earlier, the Inside Shot, right about the Cavs just about every single day. Recently wrote about the defensive activity that Keon Ellis and Dennis Schröder had brought to the team because everybody, as you might imagine, has their eyes on what James Harden has been doing, but those two role players the Cavs got have been pretty good too.
Yeah, okay, there you have it. Sorry, I hear my son screaming in the background, so I'm very curious to see what's going on over there. But appreciate you, Danny, as always, for coming through. And shout out to Danny, man. Make sure to give him a follow. Make sure to check out his Substack. Make sure to go check out Locked On Cavs and see his coverage. I know what's going to happen because it always happens between both these two teams when they face off. You're going to have Cavs fans coming over here if it's good. And it's going to be Knicks fans going over there if it's good, man. So it should be a good one tomorrow. Danny, appreciate you coming through once again. And Knicks Nation, appreciate you for tapping in as always. Make sure that thumbs up button for your boys. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Make sure to support our sponsors, Mando. Remember, go to shopmando.com. Use that promo code KFTV to get 20% off your first purchase over there, and make sure to go to Fabletics, man. Sign up as a VIP and get 80% off. Make sure to select KFTV when prompted to let them know that we sent you over there. On top of that, let me salute some of our franchise channel members, man. We got Fave 424 in here. Appreciate you for coming through. We got John Talento. We got Junior Chroma as well. Who else we got in here? We got STG Nick. Shout out to you, my guy. We got Boogs Way. Shout out to you. We got Keon Smith, appreciate you as well. We got Timothy Danzler in here. We got Zach. Shout out to all you guys for coming through for another Game of the Week preview. Who else we got in here, man? We got Daniel Barris Sports Highlights. Shout out to you, man. Shout out to you for being here, too. And I'm sure there's some Cavs fans in here. They're just hiding, man. They're hiding in the background. I know they're waiting to talk. Man. We'll see how it all goes down tomorrow, man. But Danny, appreciate you once again. Shout out to all of our mods as well. We'll catch you on the next one, people. We out.